Hello everyone, welcome. And today we have something that's a little bit different than our usual. I thought, since there isn't really too much going on since the last Intervallo just finished up, and we'll be waiting quite a bit of time before Walpurgisnacht and Canto 7, I thought that I might just have a little bit of fun here and make a little video, because I kind of always have wanted to, and I think they're fun. You know, just throw this on in the background, you know, if you're doing work or anything else, and just listen to me ramble on about the cantos, and yeah, I just hope to have a bit of fun of it. I'll get this out of the way and say that this is not a serious list. Please take everything I say with a grain of salt and don't, like, hold me to it too harshly. This is mostly just me ruminating about how far we've come since Canto 1, and kind of expressing how much I love some of these cantos, and yeah, it's just supposed to be just a fun little exercise. Nothing too serious. With that said, though, I will be ranking the cantos off of a number of different categories. This includes story, gameplay, enemy variety, bosses, music, and then any sort of like wild card things. I would say wild card falls into like a je ne sais quoi, kind of like anything that doesn't necessarily fit a category per se, but something I thought worth mentioning in the ranking. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I'm gonna be doing this in order because I don't really think there's any other way to do it. Starting with Canto 1. The Outcast is an interesting one. It is admittedly very rough around the edges. Canto 1, of course, was the beginning, and I think, all things considered, they did very well and had a very strong start. But, you know, looking back with all the ways the game has changed over the years, or not even over the years, the game has changed over time, it does kind of show its age. For this ranking, I am going to be putting Canto 1 firmly. Perhaps, you know, maybe a little sadly, I'm going to put it in C tier. Canto 1 is, like, it's okay. The main, of course, center is Gregor, but the problem is because it's the beginning canto, they had to characterize everyone a little bit, so Gregor didn't really get as much time to shine, because of just the fact that everyone had to be developed because it was the first canto. I'm not going to hold that to it too strongly, but it is still, I would say, a drawback or a con of the canto itself. As for the story, it is on the simpler side. You know, it is the first. We're going into the Lobotomy Corp branch to get the bow, and we run into a lot of the old G Corp stragglers, and of course we have Yuri and her whole like little subplot line, and then of course we get introduced to N Corp, the villain team, and then, you know, we fail at the end of that canto. Now, so kind of like taking that in mind, for the gameplay wise, let's be real, Canto 1 you can just win rate through. You can win rate through Canto 1 and like never even touch your centers, and you'll probably still win. Unless you're like using only base IDs and you're on like the final apple fight. Ebony Queen wasn't too bad, but if you're on the final fight with the golden apple, I could see that being maybe a little tricky, I guess, if you're just win rating, but honestly, it's so easy that you'll probably just blow through it. Besides that, the enemy variety, I mean, everything was just weak to slash. If you had slash, you were good, and if you didn't have slash, you were just... And I don't even know. I think you'd still win, but it would just take a little bit longer. You know, we have our G Corp stragglers. We have the one G Corp like captain who's kind of like a mini boss a little bit. The Pekatula arrive for the first time, and that's all fine and dandy. But of course, it's just basic. The bosses themselves, I really enjoy Ebony Queen. I think it's really great. I don't actually really enjoy the golden apple fight. I think the bits with Yuri and that whole reveal is like, of course, one of the biggest moments early on in Limbus of like, oh man, this is legit. This is Project Moon. This is Project Moon here when a, character joins up and then dies in just a horrific way. Really sets the tone, especially for those who've never seen a Project Moon game before. But the fight itself, I don't find all that interesting. It's just clashing high, and then you hit the head or the fruit to win. Nothing really much going on. Also, this Canto, very much so, like another Canto we'll talk about very closely here soon, doesn't really have a strong-ish soundtrack. I mean, the music is always great. The music is always great, but we're kind of missing that, like, big Millie song to accompany the boss fight that would have made it just so much more impactful. But of course, they didn't start doing that till later on. I'm not gonna like hold it against it too harshly as it was early, but again, it does leave a lot to be desired in comparison to the rest. Except for one, which I will say, Gregor's rendition of the ending Canto song is actually probably still tied for like my favorite. And that makes for an amazing ending to that Canto. However, of course, for all the things I said before, I kind of have to put Canto 1 in C tier, which is not bad. It's not bad. Like, that's why there's no, like, D or F. Like, I don't think any of these are bad. I think that some are just better than others. And that's totally fine. But because of all those things, I'm going to put the Canto here. And I don't really think there's anything else to say about it. I will mention, of course, the wild card element for this one would be Yuri, her whole thing and her like death and how it really sets that tone. Really strong and impactful, but doesn't make it move the meter for me too much. Next we have the Unloving with Rodian. I would say that this actually is probably the weakest Canto we have. I know that there's some really good parts in it. I really enjoy a lot of the gambling stuff. I enjoy like the fun casino bits. Like they upped the enemy variety, they upped the presentation. You have this really great scene where Rodian outwits all the other gamblers with the luck, whatever it's called, the luck ticket or whatever that was, the name of it. But Unloving has a lot of problems, and I would say even more problems than Canto 1. Mostly, it's just the story was very lacking, I'm gonna be honest. I think it's the weakest story. I mean, Rodian, of course, she gets some good development, but it's just... Both Canto 1 and Canto 2 feel very much like a part 1 versus like the entirety of a character's arc, I would be so happy if later down the line in like a later Canto we got to revisit Gregor and Rodian, because I feel like they just did not have full complete arcs throughout this. And like Rodian's very much leaves off on a like cliffhanger, and even as recently as this the time-killing Intervallo with the Eurodivi, we're still seeing bits and pieces of Rodian's story that are still present. So, like, obviously, this indicates to me that they're going to revisit it. Now, with that in mind, that is to say that it is very weak. I think has the worst boss. The whole Baba Yaga house, it's fun. It's got a neat little like gimmick, but it's boring. It's really boring. You fight 4 waves of enemies, and that's it. You fight your 4 waves of enemies, and then you win the fight. I'm just adjusting audio there. Hopefully that sounds a little better. Weakest boss, probably in the entire game. The music is, I hate to say it, kind of forgettable. I mean, I like some of the themes with around the Baba Yaga house and like in the underground, and some of the casino themes are really fun, but nothing really strongly stands out to me. Again, missing a really like climactic big Millie song style of presentation. And I think for that reason, I kind of just had to put the Unloving at the bottom. It definitely did improve on some things from the first Canto, but I think it was kind of, you know, a step forward and then maybe like kind of a half step back. And not terrible by any means, just the weakest in my opinion. And I hope that Rodian gets another go in the future. And last thing is, there's no real wild card for this one. Like, even Canto 1 has the Yuri plotline. I don't really see that for Rodians. Like, most we have is, yes, the Euro Divi and the future plot with, what's his name? That's coming up again. But with all that considered, it's going in C tier. Now, the Unconfronting, I'm gonna say, actually, I don't know, this might be a little bit of a controversial one. I would say Unconfronting is actually like, I would say it's very solidly either a high B or a low A. I think just to like spread out the chart a bit, I'm gonna say it's B tier. Now, Unconfronting is when I would like to say that PM really like got into their stride. Like, very strong storytelling. Sinclair was front and center, and he had all of the big story moments that developed his character. We got to learn about his backstory. We got to see the outcome of his villain backstory character in Cromer. Cromer was an amazing villain. It is a far cry. The other two Cantos are a far cry from Cromer. Cromer is just so good. The whistle, the outfit, just the crazy. Everything about the Unconfronting in terms of its story and working as a character arc is so good. The enemies are a little bit of a tougher spot. I admittedly don't think Incorp are very fun to fight. They are very much, hey, do you have blunt damage? If so, you're okay. Do you not have blunt damage? Okay, your fights are gonna be about 5 minutes more than they would be otherwise. And that was me. I didn't have many blunt IDs at the time, and it was a struggle. It was annoying. Especially some of the, what am I saying? Some of the abnormalities that they added, especially though, you know, the guys, the ones that get enraged and they have the big claws and they just freaking two-shot your characters if they win a clash and hit them. Like, those guys, hate them. Hate when they show up in my mirror dungeons. I don't want to see them. I don't want them around. I even hate fighting Incorp in the mirror dungeons. They are just so tanky. And this is something I didn't really criticize about the first two Cantos. Maybe that's not fair, but for me, I think it's fine to start introducing this here. Now that we've had more IDs being added to the game, in the Unconfronting, we get Incorp as a team. And let me just say, Incorp was a flop. Hear me out. Hear me out. Yes. Incorp can work if you put enough investment into them, if you get the right ego gifts in the mirror dungeons. Incorp can perform well, but let's be honest. Outside of Inclair and Incorp Faust, the gripping, every Incorp ID is shit. And I don't mean like kinda bad, I mean really bad. And I apologize if you really love that team, but my god, you could not pay me to run Incorp Mersault in a team. And I did. I ran him for a time, and I thought to myself as I was playing him of like, maybe I'm just playing wrong. Like, there's no way he's this bad. No, he's that bad. And then you have Don, you have Heathcliff, you have Rodian, you have... Who's the fourth one? I guess the first one would be Mersault. All four of them are meh to bad. And even now, with all the buffs we've had and the changes to a lot of the IDs and even like Uptype 4, Incorp is on the struggle bus, man. Just not really good IDs, except for the fact of Enclair and Infaust. Probably, like, I would say, the biggest jump in power the game has ever experienced. And I don't put that lightly. When the Gripping Faust and Enclair hit the game, that was a escalation in power in comparison to other IDs that we had never seen before. Like, Enclair, in comparison to everything else, was like ridiculous. It like wasn't even comparable. There was not a single ID that would be comparable to Enclair, unless you'd count, like, I don't know, like, I mean, Rabbit Heathcliff was really strong, yeah, and I mean, we had a few other ones in there that were like solid and were pretty useful, but like, let's get real. And Claire just dumpstered everything. You ran him any time that you could, just because he was that good. And yeah, no, if you were able to get in Claire, oh man, you were sitting pretty, even into Canto 4 and even into to now. Enclair's still good. I don't run him anymore because I have more like solidified teams, but you can throw Enclair into any team and he just works. He's still good. Frickin' Umbrella Heathcliff has been buffed like 20 times and he's still bad and just very meh at best. Unless you get the right ego gifts in the dungeon. Yeah, no. With that out of the way, again, Cromer is the best boss fight the game had up to that point, along with Between Two Worlds, one of my favorite melee songs of all time. That track is so good, it rivals a lot of the library melee songs, and I will hold to that. I do 100% believe that. Is it top 5 material? I think so. I think it's capable of top 5. I'm not saying it's high top 5. I think it's probably around like the 4 or 5 area, but I would put it there. And then as for like the wild card of this Canto, I would say just the absolute just brutality and gore and just the awful everything with Incorp was just such a shock to the system, even after Canto 1 and Yuri. It really just, the story hit like it hadn't before. Like I said, this is where PM found their stride, and I think it is well deserving of a B tier. Not perfect by any means. There's still some big problems in there, especially not a big fan of the enemy design. I think they could have done a lot better there. And if you didn't have blunt damage, you were really hurting that entire Canto, which was a little dumb. But outside of that, very solid Canto all around, and I think it's well deserving of the spot. Now, you may think, well, I mean, are we just going to go in ascending order? And I mean, kinda, yeah, they do get exponentially better as they go, but actually, as much as I would like to, you know what? I'm gonna put Canto 4 in S tier. I think Canto 4 is, without a doubt, probably my favorite Canto. Everything about Yisang, the story, the the ending of in the confrontation with Dongrang, just everything was just so good. It was the highest quality we'd seen thus far, and I'd say Canto 4 still is like a shining star of storytelling, and I think it might be some of Project Moon's best work. Everything with the League of Nine, everything with Dongrang, and you saying just how beautiful it was, how it came together with the fight against Farmwatch. I don't know. I have a huge soft spot in my heart for Canto 4. And of course, it introduced one of some of my favorite IDs of all time, Spice Brushy saying. If anyone who's been watching my channel for some time would know how much I love Spice Brushy saying. I used him all throughout, up until replaced with Blade Lineage, pretty much. I still use him on Flex here and there. One of my favorite IDs. And just... man. It was just so good. Now, let me slow down here a little bit. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. And I would be more than happy to move it down to an A tier because of some of its faults, which are big and glaring. It is so long. Canto 4, I feel like it was some insecurity on PM's part of just wanting to have enough content in the game. So they really, really packed Canto 4 with a lot of filler fights. It's like 40-something levels in Canto 4 in comparison to like the now around late 20, early 30s mark, which I think is perfect. Canto 4 really pushed the amount of fights, and the dungeon was super long too, and I mean, it was just fighting the same, like, you know, the robots over and over and over and over again, and just the K-Corp guys, I didn't like them either. They were not the best to fight. They would just dumpster you if you could not counter them, and then they get healed, and then you just have to fight them again, and then you have to fight those stupid cleanup guys with the staff blades, you know, Honglu's ID. And it was just a nightmare. Don't like them at all. And for all these reasons I just said, honestly, Canto 4 realistically should be an A tier. It should be. However, my own personal bias, I'm putting it in S tier, but very much, without it being my favorite, it would definitely be an A tier. It's not an objective list, by the way, if you didn't catch that by now. Besides that, though, bosses. Dongbik was the first of her kind, a sanity-based fight, which for many, including myself, a bit annoying, and it would make a return in a later Canto. We'll get to that when we get to the heartbreaking. But for the first of its kind, was good. Nice sanity fight, really awesome phase transitions, the flower fields, and although introducing my least favorite frickin' boss of all time, the Weeping Bull or the Tearful Bull, whichever one it is. Hate that fight. Hate it. Least favorite boss fight. I dodge it every single time I get the chance. I don't even like doing my thread for the day, if that's the fight. I just don't like seeing it. I don't want to see it. It's just not a fun fight. It clashes too high, it drains your sanity, so you just fail over and over again. It hits you, even if you're endured to blunt, it still hits you like a truck. If you're not endured to blunt, it's probably going to stagger you and then kill you. And once you start losing, you lose hard. It is not a great fight. However, it is saved by what is, I would think, one of the epitome boss fights of Limbus Company, which is Dongrang. As a character, an incredible villain. Everything about the story is just so thought-provoking and philosophical, and having these two ideals between Yisang and Dongren clashing, and then, of course, with Fly My Wings, probably one of the best melee songs of all time. I would not even stretch to say, like, it is top 3 material, I think. If not, it's in that very, very firm number 4 slot. But Fly My Wings, for me, some days it just hits that top 3 mark. And, of course, the end of the fight, when Yisang does his ego and stabs Dongren, and then you get the music swell and the beat hit and the lyrics come in and you see the wings on both of them. It's just perfect. It's beautiful. I can't put Canto 4 anywhere but S tier. Like, just incredible. But really, Canto 4 is A tier. But in my heart it's S tier, but realistically it's A tier. So we'll just keep it there. Because that is, I think, the fairest assumption to make so far. Next is the Evil Defining, and we have Ishmael's. Before you ask, Canto 4, admittedly, it doesn't really have like a wildcard element. I think the execution of it really was, if anything, like the biggest... I don't know, there's no real surprises in Canto 4. There's no like big, huge plot reveals or like things that just, you know, hit you like a brick house and just, you know, it doesn't really have that, and that's okay. It doesn't need to. Some Cantos have that wild card and some don't, and I think for Canto 4, just overall quality, it lands it there. But like I said, we're in the Evil Defining. Evil Defining, Ishmael's Canto, I'm gonna say belongs firmly in the S tier. Ishmael's Canto, start to finish, is probably like the realization in real time that they perfected the formula. From here on, I'm assuming that all the Cantos will operate like Canto 5. And I think that is just purely because Canto 5 was perfect. It had well-paced well-paced levels. We had a good mix of combat and story, and it was not too long, but we had enough combat to keep things fresh and interesting, and they balanced it very well. I think the enemy variety is really great. Pequod Town can die. They can go die in a hole. But you have fights that like really push your ability as a player and not just a numbers check. Like, admittedly, like, you know, Canto 4, a lot of those fights you just brute force them. There's no real tactics with the robots or the K-Corp guys. You kind of just have to hope you win the clashes, and that's about the best you can do. The Canto 5, take fights like Pequod Town, take fights like the trio, not Ishmael, Captain Ahab, Starbuck, and Queequeg. Incredible fight. You have to play that fight. You cannot just go into that fight and win rate. You will lose. You will lose. Anyone who especially fought them in Railway, the last Railway, you will lose very hard. That is a rough fight. Along with introducing the fluorescent shark, the frickin' green clam that we've been like waiting for forever to see. And then, of course, the climactic conclusion and the fight against Captain Ahab. It's up there with some of the best moments in all of Limbus. That's just not negotiable. Probably one of their best boss fights yet. Again, I will like put like a little bit of an asterisk on that. I think Captain Ahab isn't like the most interesting fight in comparison to like them as a trio. For Captain Ahab, it is just kind of a It's a clash check. Can you clash and win? Yes, then the fight will be okay. Do you lose a couple clashes? Well, you're gonna be a little less okay, but you can probably still win. It's a lot of spam ego. Nothing really too crazy. But outside of that, I mean, come on. Whose heart did not soar when Compass kicked in with the lyrics with Ishmael on the boat, grabbing the harpoon and going right for the whale's heart? The way that you are staggered and downed and you have to drag the chain away from Captain Ahab to the heart to pick a new path. God, just so good. And the fact that we have for the first time, we have like animated cutscenes happening with like I remember freaking out when we saw the cutscene of like the boat extending and then the things locking into place and like, oh, it's a battlefield. Like such a cool like bit of cutscene that I was not expecting to see. So great. The music is incredible. Again, Compass is probably my number 2 or number 3 favorite Millie song. It's so great, both the normal version and with the heartbeat. It just fits perfectly so well. Ishmael as a character gets an amazing arc with Queequeg and everything about her finding her own path. Just everything just fits so well. And it is just such an enjoyable Canto to play. And then you have bits like, you know, early on, you have freaking Heathcliff and the coupons. Like, that's hilarious. It added a lovely bit of comedy to mix in with a lot of the, like, we kind of been coming from more, like, very serious and depressing Cantos. Like, mixing in a huge bit of comedy, and then Ricardo as a fight is, again, a boss you can't just win rate. You have to fight Ricardo a very specific way. You have to specifically not clash. Clashing gets you killed. You have to stagger him before he hits you. And sure, with some team comps you can brute force those clashes, especially now. But at the time, that is a boss that teaches you, hey, if you haven't learned by now, you don't have to clash everything all the time. One-sided attacks as a strategy are just as viable and sometimes heavily encouraged. And sometimes you need to do it to win. We have the Indigo Elder who comes in, a new color that we see for the first time. So great. Great character. His interactions with Virgilius are so good. And yeah, everything just worked together so well. Loved Queequeg as a character. Loved Captain Ahab as a character. Admittedly, the other bits of the Pequod Town and some of those, like Starbuck and Pip and some of those other characters, they're okay. They're okay. I like them. But they're none to write home about. But Ishmael, Queequeg, and Ahab, they take the stage. And my god, what a Canto. What a goddamn frickin' Canto. So good. With that, though, we do come to the most recent Canto, the Heartbreaking. For the Heartbreaking, I would say this is a tough one, because I don't think the Heartbreaking is... just kidding with you. Heartbreaking is S tier. Like, come on. You really think I was gonna rate it lower than S tier? Yeah, okay, it's boring. Sure, the Cantos get better as time went on. Yeah, but like, that's great. That's the point. That's good. As time went on, Project Moon got better at making the Cantos, and they learned. And then, you know, if the evil defining, if Ishmael's Canto was the, hey, we've got the formula down, the Heartbreaking was, yeah, we've got the formula down. Just, my god. Everything. Just, you have the hilarious the comedic fun of Sir Squirrel, which is so funny. One of the funniest things I've seen in ages. And you have things like, you know, Heathcliff's struggle with returning home, and you have a lot of his characterization. You see a lot more of Heathcliff's, who up to this point had just been kind of like, you know, abrasive, a jerk, a tool. Probably a lot of people, including mine's like least favorite center, because he was just a jerk. And you didn't really get much with him character-wise. But then you get here, and you get to see such a depth to Heathcliff. You get to learn all about his backstory, about his life at they're in T Corp. You get to learn all about and you know what I mean, it's the Section T Corp Nest, whatever you're gonna call it, just locale. You have the interactions with Hindley, with Catherine, especially with Kathy. Just so much layered upon layered upon layered, and you're getting all that in the beginning, and then you find out like, oh, Heathcliff was invited here because Kathy is dead, but that doesn't make any sense. Why would she write, you know, while being dead? How did she know ahead of time she would die? And it's because it becomes a mystery. And then you have, oh, here's the rabid gang with the red eyes. What's up with the red eyes? What's going on with that? And then, you know, you have Matthew, who's this weird sort of backstory character from Heathcliff, but you know, he's a little bit out there, but, you know, kind of cool, and might be an ally. And, you know, it all starts off fine and dandy, and then it hits. And I mean, I don't need to do a spoiler warning. You knew this is going to be spoilers. If you didn't click off the video now, you're not going to do it, so whatever. The reveal that Matthew is actually Heathcliff from another world. So insanely good, especially when the hints were all in the first fight, which was a rough fight. That one was a rough one. That was I would say, one of the more frustrating fights. It was pure RNG, at least IMO. It was pure RNG. Felt like if you didn't win those first few clashes, you just lost outright, no matter what you did. So there's that. It's a little bit of a spot, a little thing I can complain about, but the reveal is just so good. And then you have immediately after Heathcliff distorting. We get to get a distortion firsthand, and Heathcliff's wolf form being so freaking sick, and the music is incredible for that fight, and you're like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is peak, and you're only halfway through the Canto. And it's like, oh wait, this is part like 1. This is part 1 of this Canto. Part 2, if you consider, like, you know, the wolf, the distorting and wolf fight is like literally the beginning of part 2, but I would still lump it in with that. You have that. Then you have all of this stuff happening with finding out about the you know, wild hunt, and going on, finding out more about Kathy, about how she was haunted by a ghost, which is actually a version of her from another world, just like Heathcliff's here. And then I don't even know. The moments of just Virgilius coming in. You get to control Virgilius and use him, and he is there in all of his glory as a color, and he is crazy OP. There's not a single person that did not pop off when Virgilius came in. Hypest moment in Limbus Company. Hypest moment in Limbus Company, flat. There is nothing else that peaks it, as in the game right now. Nothing. Peak right there. Then what else we've got? We've got the introduction of some of the best, like, IDs. I didn't really touch on the IDs for Canto 5, mostly because outside of Captain Ishmael and the Pequod trio, like, I mean, stuff was good, yeah, but like, yeah, it was really nice to get the story Canto, and that was really great. Pequod Ishmael is, of course, amazing character, and I love her, and she's such a fun team. But again, they're just a trio. As for the heartbreaking, though, you get the maids, and the maids are such a fun team. Sinking gets back into the meta for the first time, and we're about to be getting frickin' Wild Hunt Heathcliff here soon, so they're about to be even better. But even without Heathcliff, they were still insanely strong and fun and played differently and brought a lot of fresh air to the game. And at that same time, your enemies are like such a great array of fights between the maids and the rabbits, and then you're fighting the Wild Hunt copies, you're fighting Henley, you've got the distorted Henley, and then, of course, how could I not mention every single thing with Wild Hunt Heathcliff, or Earl King Heathcliff, my apologies, Earl King Heathcliff. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. I couldn't believe that it was the same voice actor. That's how much he was acting his ass off in those scenes, and just embodying Heathcliff's desperation to be with Kathy again. And you have this struggle in coming out with this army that Virgilius is holding off as you chase after him. Dante awakening a new power. You could slow down time, and you have that dope like new mechanic added to the game that changes the dimension of how you do fights, because now you can do things that are completely independent of your team and the enemy's team, but you're like taking control of the battlefield by lowering their speed by half, which is so useful, by the way. And what an amazing way to get the edge in a combat encounter that is not RNG reliant. You control when you activate the time, and you have to pick the moment based on your best guess and your best like strategic play as a player, putting that power in your hands. And it just feels so good to have a round where you're gonna be like in a bad spot or losing pretty hard, and then all of a sudden you hit that time stop, you slow them down, and then you turn that L into a W. You turn into a win just because. That is such a good feeling. What a great addition to the game. One that I am so excited to be expanded upon, probably in this next Canto here. And okay, there's too much stuff for me to even talk about. Boss fights. Earl King Heathcliff and the Banshee / Ghost of Catherine. Best boss fight in the game. That's it. It's the best boss fight in the game. The face transitions, the music. This is where I come to say this. The Fields of Violet. I hope I'm getting that correct. I always screw it up. But the Millie track is Through Patches of Violet. My mistake. Through Patches of Violet, I would say, is Millie's best song. It is such a just raw piece that is charged with, you can just feel the emotional weight of Heathcliff and Catherine in the song itself, and the lyrics are just heartbreaking. The way that it's like they are fated to always be apart and never to be together, and you feel all that sorrow and that pain, and it's just a banger. It is just a banger. They introduce it early on. You get it early with the fights with Nelly, and like it's just like you're just like, oh wow, and I noticed it too, and I was like, oh wow, the Millie song already, and then I was like, oh, this is weird. It doesn't really sound like Millie, because it wasn't. I didn't realize it was a duet. And then you get to Earl King and the Banshee fight, and then the lyrics come in and the vocals and they duet and it changes the piece based on which one you're fighting, and it switches perfectly on the dot every single time. That elevated the fight from a amazing fight to a perfect fight. There is no better. At least for now. Yeah, no. The heartbreaking as a whole is perfect. I honestly, I would have to, like, besides like the first fight with like the Matthew Heathcliff, that fight, that was rough. Didn't really care for it. Nellie's betrayal was like, I mean, it was okay. I mean, it's not the most, like, you know, it didn't wow me or anything. It was more so like recontextualizing the events of the story, and you know, it was good for what it served, but it wasn't like a huge, you know, turn or huge backstab. I mean, Nellie's cool and all, but I wasn't like, you know, torn apart that Nellie betrayed us. But I mean, outside of that, like, come on. Canto 6 is just perfection. And I think if no one had even, like, if you took a person, they'd never touched a Project Moon game before, and you gave them just Canto 6, I feel like they'd be in. I feel like they would just be in on it. Because I just don't know. I don't know how you could not after that hype thing. You know, how great it is. The music, the characters, everything about it, the twists and turns, and everything just fit together, and it just makes me so excited for Canto 7, because it is hard to imagine how something could be better. It's crazy. Like, how could something peak? Like, this is always what we say. You finish Canto 3 and it's like, oh my god, that was so peak. How do we top it? And you finish Canto 4 and you're like, oh, that was really long, but that was also so peak. How do we top it? And you get to Canto 5 and it's like, oh my god, this is perfection. This is incredible. And then Canto 6 hits you and you're like, oh my god, this is peak. Wait, we're only halfway through the Canto? Oh my god. And then it's like, you finish it, and yeah. No. The wild card for the heartbreaking is honestly just everything. The fact that everything hit, everything just fit together well, and yeah, that's all I have to say. Heartbreaking is perfect. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about Canto 7 now. So, if you want to avoid spoilers for the most recent Intervallo, Murder on the Warp Express, I would leave now. Thank you for coming, by the way. I do appreciate your support. And thank you for listening to me ramble for almost an hour. But I'm going to begin in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so with Murder on the Warp Express, we have one of the dopest things we've seen thus far, with the reveal that Don Quixote is a second kindred, a frickin' blood fiend, a super vampire, like Eileen level, probably, or close to it. And we got that in an Intervallo. We got that, that is a Canto reveal in the Intervallo. So that's just going to be sitting while we're going through the motions. And with that, like, I have no idea what even to expect. Like, are we going to fight Nosferatu? Are we going to fight, like, the OG kindred? Are we going to fight, like, a court of vampires? Like, is Dawn going to awaken and become a freaking blood fiend color level killing machine? Oh yeah, and by the way, PM's just like, you know, they just throw that out there you know, usually it takes us a few weeks of like debating to figure out like, oh, I wonder what the, or it takes us like a part or two to figure out what the Canto ID is going to be. Oh man, I wonder what it's going to be for Ishmael. Oh, of course it's Ahab. And then you go, it's like, oh, I wonder what Heathcliff's going to be. And then Earl King shows up. Like, ah, that's it. Oh man, that's crazy. And then it's like, we're not even in the Canto yet. We're not even in the Canto yet. There's no time for like, I mean, you could still theorize in Theorycraft, but damn, like, they just show, by the way, Bloodfiend frickin' Dawn is 100% going to be the Canto ID, and if you think any different, I don't know how to explain it to you, but like, that's going to be it. I would put money on it being that. I would be shocked if it wasn't, but there's a chance. There's a chance. But yeah, no, just... Canto 7 is going to be so amazing. Can't wait for it. With that, though, that'll be the end of this video. Again, this was just a fun exercise. Thank you for listening to me ramble about a game I love very much. And, you know, honestly, even if it's not really a super huge deal either way of like, yeah, I mean, I probably could be a little bit more critical and put these in different places and, you know, all this and that, but like, not fine. I enjoyed making the video and I hope you enjoyed listening. As always, thank you all so much for the support. And before I go today, for fun, let's just rapid fire on the intervals, even though I said I wasn't going to. Let's do it. Yield Flesh Claim Bone is going to be S tier. Loved it. Super dope. Best IDs, all that stuff. Hell's Chicken is going to be A tier. It was hilarious. Super funny. Loved it. Still, the frickin' Mersault rapping will never... it lives rent-free in my mind. SEA, I'm gonna put in like C tier. I didn't really like it very much. I mean, the characterization was cool for Ishmael, and we did have like the Molar crew show up again from Library, which is really neat. But I didn't really care for the crabs. They were kind of meh. Selva Obscura doesn't count, it's the tutorial. Just put that there. And then Miracle in District 20, I want to put in B tier. Had a good mix of comedy and like world building expansion, like going to the outskirts was really cool. And there's some things in there that I'm not sure if they'll come up later. There's a lot of unanswered questions still about a lot of things with Miracle in District 20, but at the end of the day, it was a fun little getaway, good change of pace, and like a nice palate cleanser after the after Canto 4, or well, was it after Canto 4 or Canto 5? I think it was after, no, it was after Canto 5 because they were getting the clothes for Heathcliff for Canto 6. So my bad. Yeah, it was just it was fun. I liked it. Really great intervallo. And for those wondering, Murder on the Warp Express, I would also put probably in A tier. Well, nah, let's go S tier. The Dawn reveal alone is S tier on its own, but the new multi-crack IDs, the great characterization, going back to the warp trains, the enemy, although limited variety of enemies was cool, and then yeah, just the story reveals and all that stuff made for a really solid and very brief intervallo. So it was a nice little snack before the feast that is to come. With all that in mind, this is my tier list. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to me. And maybe I'll make another one of these. Who knows? Thank you again, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye!